At exactly midnight, Daniel received a letter. There was no stamp, no address, only his name was written on the envelope. Daniel Carter. He stared at it for several seconds before opening it. Inside was a single piece of paper. Open quote, "If you want to know what happened to your father, come to Blackwood House tonight. Come alone." Close quote. Daniel's hands began to tremble. His father had disappeared 20 years ago. Everyone had told Daniel that his father was dead, but nobody had ever found his body. For 20 years, Daniel had tried to forget. Now someone was telling him that the truth was still waiting for him. At the bottom of the letter was one final sentence. "Do not enter the house after midnight." Daniel looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. He grabbed his coat and drove toward Blackwood House. Chapter 2. Blackwood House. Blackwood House stood at the end of a narrow forest road. The building was enormous. Its windows were broken, the walls were covered with dark vines, and the front door was slightly open. Daniel stepped out of his car. The forest was completely silent. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of wind. He checked his watch. 11:58 p.m. He walked toward the house. Then he heard something behind him, a whisper. "Daniel." He turned around. Nobody was there. His heart began beating faster. He entered the house. The front door suddenly slammed shut behind him. Daniel jumped. He tried the handle. Locked. Then the grandfather clock in the hallway began to move. Tick, tick, tock, tick, tock. Daniel looked at the clock. The hands were moving backward. 11:59, 11:58, 11:57. Then every light in the house turned on at once. And Daniel heard a man's voice from upstairs, a voice he hadn't heard in 20 years. Daniel, his father. Chapter 3, the photograph. Daniel ran upstairs. At the end of the hallway was an old bedroom. The door was open. Inside, there was a wooden table. On the table sat an old photograph. Daniel picked it up. It showed his father standing outside Blackwood House. But he wasn't alone. There were 3 other men with him. Daniel recognized one immediately. His uncle, Robert. The second man was the town mayor. And the third man, Daniel had never seen before. Behind the photograph, someone had written, 4 men entered the house, only 3 came out. Daniel froze. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. Slow footsteps. Someone was walking down the hallway. Daniel turned. A tall shadow stood at the end of the corridor. "Who are you?" Daniel shouted. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it slowly raised one hand and pointed toward a door, a basement door. Then the shadow disappeared. Daniel walked toward the basement. He opened the door. A cold wind rushed past him, and from somewhere deep below, he heard his father's voice. "Daniel, don't trust Robert." Chapter 4. The basement. The basement was filled with old boxes. Daniel searched through them until he found a small wooden chest. Inside was a diary. It belonged to his father. Daniel opened the first page. October 12th, 2006. We discovered something beneath Blackwood House. The next page was covered with strange symbols. Then Daniel found another entry. October 18th. Robert wants to destroy everything. He says people must never know the truth. Daniel's breathing became heavy. He turned the page. October 19th. If anything happens to me, my son must never come here. Then the final entry. October 20. They are coming tonight. The rest of the page was covered in blood. Daniel dropped the diary. Then he heard a sound behind the wall. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel moved closer. He touched the wall. It opened. Behind it was a hidden passage. And at the end of the passage was a small room. Inside stood an old chair, and sitting in the chair was Daniel's father. The truth. Daniel couldn't speak. His father looked exactly as he remembered him. Older, weaker, but alive. "Dad?" The old man slowly raised his head. "Daniel?" Tears filled his eyes. "I knew you would come." Daniel rushed toward him. "What happened to you?" His father looked toward the doorway. "Your Uncle Robert?" "Why?" "Because we found the truth beneath this house." "What truth?" His father pointed to the floor. Blackwood House wasn't built as a home. Daniel looked confused. It was built to hide something. His father continued. 20 years ago, Robert and the mayor discovered a secret underground chamber. Inside were documents proving that several powerful people in the town had been stealing money for decades. They killed anyone who tried to expose them. Your father and I found the documents. Robert wanted them destroyed. Daniel stared at him. "But why didn't you escape?" His father lowered his head. "I tried. Robert caught me. He locked me here for 20 years. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the passage. Someone was coming. His father whispered, "Daniel, run." Chapter 6, Midnight. The basement door opened. Robert stood there. He was holding a flashlight. Daniel stared at his uncle. "You." Robert smiled. "I knew you would eventually come." Daniel stepped backward. "You killed people." Robert shook his head. "No, I simply protected the town from the truth." Daniel held up his father's diary. "You can't hide anymore." Robert laughed. "You think anyone will believe you?" Then the grandfather clock upstairs began to ring. 1, 2, 3. Daniel looked at his watch. Midnight. The lights went out. Robert suddenly screamed. A shadow appeared behind him, the same shadow Daniel had seen upstairs. Robert turned around. His face became pale. "No." The shadow whispered, "You promised." Robert fell to the floor, and then everything became silent. Chapter 7, The Morning. When the police arrived the next morning, Robert was gone. So was the hidden room. The basement wall had closed again. Nobody believed Daniel's story, had nobody except his father. Daniel took his father to the hospital. After 20 years, the family was finally together again. But Daniel kept the photograph. Months later, he examined it carefully. There was something he hadn't noticed before. In the background of the photograph stood a young boy, Daniel. But the photograph had been taken 20 years before. Daniel was only 6 years old. He stared at the image in disbelief. On the back of the photograph, new words had appeared. Words that weren't there before. The house remembers everything. Daniel looked toward the window. Outside, the night was completely silent. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then a familiar voice whispered, "Daniel." It was his father's voice. But his father was sleeping in the next room. Daniel slowly turned toward the bedroom, and the door